This is kind of a strange question to think about, but how important is it to live with a clear conscience? Is it important? What effect can it have on you to know you've done the best you can and there's nothing left you've left on the table? Does that do a lot for you? It does for me. Do you think that kind of a mindset's beneficial in life? I think it is. We see in the text, Paul has this mindset toward his ministry. You may not see it immediately, but let me explain. Look at Acts 18:5. It says, when Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul was occupied with the word, testifying to the Jews that the Christ was Jesus. And when they opposed and reviled him, he shook out his garments and said to them, your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles. Okay, a couple things, important things. If this sounds familiar to you, you're right, because this has happened once before in another previous city. Paul did say this once before. This was not the first time he was trying to reach Jews with the gospel, and they absolutely did not want it, and they turned on him. They opposed and reviled him, actually, because he testified that the Christ, the Christus, the Messiah, was Jesus. So he shakes off his garments, dusts off the shoes, and tells them, I'm going to the Gentiles. Now, again, by this time, when Paul says this, he means I'm done in this city. So he'll go to the next city probably and still go to the Jews first again. I don't want you to think he's swearing off all Jews forever. He never actually does that. Every time he goes to a new city, he tries the Jews first. He goes to the synagogue first. So even after he says these things, what he means is, here, this Jewish community, I'm going to the Gentiles. But the statement he makes is so interesting. Look at that line. Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent. Now, if you're not super versed in the Bible, that might sound a little harsh. You might even say, I thought we were talking just about like preaching here. What's this about blood being on your own heads? I don't get it. So the answer is going to give us a deeper look into how Paul sees his relationship with those who need Christ and what is and is not his responsibility. So it seems to me like Paul is free quoting Ezekiel 33. Okay, there's a little mini example in Ezekiel 33, 2-6 called the watchman on the wall, some might say. And I'm going to read that for you. So God is talking to Ezekiel in a prophecy, and he says, if I bring the sword upon a land, and the people of the land take a man from among them and make him the watchman, and if he sees the sword coming upon the land and blows the trumpet and warns the people, then anyone who hears the sound of the trumpet and does not take warning, and the sword comes and takes them, his blood shall be on his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, but he did not take warning. His blood shall be upon himself. But if he had taken warning, he would save his life. But here it is, the flip side. If the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any one of them, that person is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at the watchman's hand. That's a lot of words. That means if you are employed as a guard on top of a wall, okay? Maybe you need to think back to Mulan in the opening scene, okay? That might take you there. If you're sitting on top of a wall and your job is nothing but to look for enemies coming, that's your only job. Is there enemies coming to take our people captive? Are they coming to fight us? If you see the enemies coming and you say, whoa, and you blow the trumpet, that was pretty good. I'm actually surprised myself there. I was expecting much worse. And you blow the trumpet, and then you look back, and the people are just all looking at you. You know, they're napping, or they're just staring at you, and they're like, what's going on? You're like, there's enemies coming. There's enemies coming. There's enemies coming. And you say it over and over, and you blow the trumpet again, and they don't do anything. If the enemy takes them, whose fault is that? It's their fault. Their fault. Go back to the beginning of the scenario. Enemies coming, you see it, and you just think, what do I do? What do I do? what do I do? And you don't say anything. And you just panic. You freeze. You don't blow the trumpet. And the enemies scale the wall, and they go in, and the town is shocked. Whose fault is it? Your fault. You're the watchman. Okay? So, I think Paul has that story in his head when he's telling this. You can see he's referencing it. He's saying to the Jews at Corinth, look, I did my job. I'm the evangelistic watchman on the wall. I saw the enemy coming. I blew the trumpet. I know about the Messiah, and I told you about him over and over. You did not listen to me. That's on you at this point, not me. If you don't listen to the watchman, it's not the watchman's fault. AKA, your blood, which it will come because of your inaction, is on your own head. That's what he means. This is really important in the way we see our responsibility to the world. So there's some tough news and there's some good news with this concept. First, the tough news. If it's within your power, this should hit every one of us in the stomach. So let's take it, and then we'll enjoy the next one. First one's tough. If it's within your power or my power to share the gospel with someone in your life, and you don't, you're like the watchman who didn't alert the town the enemy was coming. You knew the gospel, you knew Jesus, you knew about heaven and hell and the judgment, but you didn't blow the trumpet when the enemy was coming, and you got to live with that, okay? That's the tough one. Here's the comforting one. If you did blow the trumpet, and you do tell somebody the gospel, and they don't listen to you, you can live with a clear conscience. It may not be what you want to happen. It may not give you joy, but you can live with a clear conscience that there is nothing more you could do. Your responsibility, Christian, is to tell, to announce, to proclaim, to persuade, to reason, to try. But if the listener will not listen, they have to deal with those consequences, and you should not beat yourself up over it as if it's your fault, because it is not your fault. I believe Paul lived his life this way. This mindset is healthy because it prevents you from being overwhelmed. When you realize that you can only do what you can do, that's a great feeling. When you realize that you can't change one single heart, that's God's job, not yours, it's freeing. When you realize that you are just the messenger and you're going to be judged on whether you relayed the message, that's freeing. If you get torn up over every person who doesn't respond to Jesus in your life, every person who refuses to repent and pick up their cross and believe in the gospel, you're going to question yourself and beat yourself down way more than you should. Paul gets a tough response from the Jews in Corinth. But notice, he doesn't shut down in frustration. He pivots to a more responsive crowd, and he preaches to the Gentiles. And I think that unwillingness to be bogged down and beaten down kept him going in ministry.